What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. Double A Have here. Please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm sure some of you might have heard this already about Maxine Waters telling the rioters slash protesters slash know nothing Negroes. I know most of y'all probably heard that she was telling them to pretty much like double down, quote unquote, fight harder and protest harder and, commit more violence to get their quote unquote message across. If Derek Chauvin, the cop who put his knee on George Floyd's neck, if he doesn't get sentenced, harshly, because the trial is still going on and they do expect a verdict sometime this week. Now, with that being said, in life, there's this word that is very important for many different reasons. It's a word that, all of us know, but do we put the level of importance on it that we should? The answer is going to be most likely not. And that word is value. 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 Very simple word. But at the same time, if you don't understand value, you can find yourself in a lot of difficult situations. For instance, if you don't understand the value of an item or parcel that you are trying to purchase, what can happen is you can severely be overcharged. And, if you don't know the worth, or if you have a parcel or item that you're trying to part with, if you don't understand the true value of it, then you'll sell it for far less than what you can sell it for. And then obviously you'll be out of money there. If you don't understand what value you have as a person, as a man, as a woman, then you cannot get equitable exchange for yourself. If you don't understand your value, what value that you bring and offer and have, then you can't get, you won't get equal back or justified amount back. If you don't understand value of people, say you meet a woman, or say just you're a woman listening and you meet a man and you don't understand the value of that man or the value of that woman, then you're not going to treat that woman properly. And then what's going to wind up happening is you're going to be without yet again, with nothing to show for it, or less to show for it than what you should have. So in the quote unquote black community, I've noticed throughout my many years on this planet and in this country that we have an issue with understanding value. And because of that, we put ourselves in terrible situations more often than not. And what Maxine Waters is doing right now is she's leading the people that do not understand their value to their own demise. Like she's like herding these sheep to slaughter because they don't understand their value. George Floyd did not value his life. It's simple. Had he valued his life, he'd still be alive. Or maybe he wouldn't have gone out that way. Maybe, you could still get hit by a car, whatever, struck by lightning, whatever the case may be. But for the most part, he would not have went out the way he did. If Dante Wright valued his life, he would still be alive. If Breonna Taylor valued her life, she'd be alive. And again, I don't mean alive. I mean they would not have died the way that they died. The way that they died showed that they did not understand value nor hold their lives in high regard. So that's why they were able to be taken out the way that they were taken out. So obviously, what we need to work on is understanding that, and it's so simple. I know it may sound very simple, but I'm sure the people that are listening, you could look back at the community and say, I get what this guy's saying. I totally get it. It's super simple. Like in anything, like in sports, you got to understand the basics before you can be a great basketball player or football player. You have to understand the basics. I'm saying, the rudimentary stuff. You have to get it, and you have to do it right. Because when you get it and you do all that stuff right, everything else will fall into play as it should. Same rules apply in life. If you don't understand simple things like value and how to what the fuck? appraise things properly, appraise who we are properly, appraise who's around us properly, and apply the appropriate value tag to them or that item, and then you will not be able to get what you deserve, because you don't know what the fuck you deserve. And then when you don't know what you deserve, you know what you get? You don't get what you deserve. But in a way, you do get what you deserve, because you didn't do your own due diligence and giving yourself the knowledge to understand. So then, yes, you do get what you deserve in a roundabout way. But anyway, I'm gonna play this video, and then I'm gonna add my 2 cents. That's it. Just want to be short.
Guilty verdict. If nothing does not happen, then we know that we've got to not only stay in the street, but we've got to fight for justice.
Okay, so before I let the video continue, she's from California, number one. Okay, she's in Minnesota right now saying that. Number two, she's been in politics for years. She has money. She's a millionaire, Maxine Waters, okay? So when she's talking about we have to stay in the streets, she ain't in the streets, okay? She ain't been in the streets. I'm not sure if she was born and raised in the streets, but she hasn't been in the streets in at least 50 goddamn years, because that's almost how long she's been in politics, if not more. So she hasn't been in the streets in a long, long time. And not sitting here saying that if you don't live in the streets, you can't, speak for the streets or about the streets, because you can. But when you're that disconnected as someone as a Maxine Waters is, then no, you cannot. All right, Maxine, you don't live that life. The life that you're telling these people to go down. The life, unfortunately, that these people don't have any value over their own lives, and they'll listen to you and stay in the streets, and then be more confrontational with the law enforcement in that area, right? And then if something escalates, like oftentimes it does, what's going to happen is you're going to have more dead bodies, or people will get severely hurt. And for what? Because an officer that put his knee on the neck of George Floyd and basically killed him. Him and the other ones, all together they killed that man. All because that man had no value for himself, and all because he doesn't get sentenced as most think that he should. So now you're gonna go out there and put your life on the line for what? What does it accomplish? There's no legislation on the table right now that you're going out there and being a champion for. So that's why I say these things. We have to start placing the appropriate value on our lives, on our children's lives, in our community. In our quote-unquote, first we have to build the fucking community, because the quote-unquote black community is not a real community, right? That's a charade. It's a facade. I mean, you have freaking a whole bunch of buildings owned by people that don't live in the community, that don't look like the people in the community, and you just have a whole bunch of people literally like living in the area that they don't own anything, or they own a very, very small percentage of that area. How can that be your community when you have no control over it? If it's your house, you should have control over your house. If it's your car, you have control over it. You can say, get the fuck out of my car, or you can say, I'm going to sell this car. I'm going to paint this car because it's my car. I'm going to tint the windows. It's your car. You do the fuck you want to do to it, right? In your community, how's it your community? You can't do shit in that community because you don't own anything in that community. So again, we need to we have to get on point with our words that we're using and understand, and then that way we can also apply the value to it, the value behind the words. If you say my community, then that implies that ownership belongs to you, and then when you own things, obviously you get to dictate what happens to said things. But if you say my community, but then you don't have the power to dictate anything in said community, then obviously we're misusing the word my. It's not your community. What it is a place where you live. You know what I mean? Or a place where you're staying at. For instance, if you go to a hotel, you might say, this is my hotel room. This is your room that you're renting, but it's not your hotel room. That's the hotel's hotel room. That's the temporary spot that you're staying in. And that's how I equate the quote-unquote black community now. That's just some place where you're temporarily staying for a very long time. Like when you see people that live in hotels or motels. Not trying to knock anybody, but some people do. That's their situation. People fall on hard times and they have to do what they got to do. That so be it. But if you staying in a hotel for years, that's the black community. You know what I'm saying? You staying in some place that you don't own for years, and then on top of that, you're paying higher prices for that than what you could if you just had your own spot. For oftentimes. So I say all that to put it all into perspective, okay? I know that most of y'all that's on my channel already understand and operate on the wavelength that I'm communicating at, but there are some obviously that don't know. And then if you are on the same wavelength that I am, please obviously share this video, put this video out, let people know. They have to understand the very basic things. We have to go back to the basics before we can accomplish anything, or before we can dream of accomplishing anything. It's real simple. You know what I mean? We have to crawl before we can walk, and walk before we can run, and run before we can start riding bikes. The quote-unquote black community just wants to hop in the car and start driving. And now we cannot do that. We have to do it the right way. We have to quote-unquote, for lack of better terms, trust the process, literally, go back to the basics, and do what we got to do.
You got to get more confrontation. You got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
Well, my thing is, first and foremost, you telling these people to be more confrontational, which is obviously putting them at high risk for something to happen to them. One. Two, what do you mean that you mean business? About what? About what? What legislation have you passed for a quote-unquote black man in the past 20 years, Maxine Waters? Please. You know, I would love to know. Indulge me and my subscribers in that information, please. So, what are you doing for the quote-unquote black community? And what business do you mean? Business of what? You know, if we have people that act a fool and get killed in doing so, then you know, we want to hold everybody accountable to it, which everyone should be held accountable. I'm not saying that Derek Chauvin shouldn't be arrested or whatever the case may be. I mean, not arrested, shouldn't be sentenced and put to prison. I'm not saying that he shouldn't. What I'm saying is, you know, in most things, 99.9% of things, or issues for that matter, there's a root cause. And if you get back to the root, then you could avoid everything that comes after that. You can avoid it all. You know what I'm saying? Like, for instance, Dante Wright, the root, he tried to freaking, well, not even the root, he tried to evade. The root is he had bad tags and he had a warrant. That's the root. So you go all the way back to that, you don't get pulled over. You know what I'm saying? If you address that, if your tags are good and you don't have a warrant, then you're not getting pulled over. And if you do get pulled over, you're not getting taken out the car and arrested. So that's the root. Okay, we could talk about her pulling out the gun, but how many steps past the root did that happen? That was like 5-6 steps past the root. Okay? George Floyd, same rules apply. We have to go back to the root. He put himself in a position to have the interaction with the police. That's the root. Avoid that. Avoid that. You know, in life, you have to control what you can't control. And in all these instances, I see people controlling what they can control, but making terrible decisions. And then they get turned into you know, like a greater figure than what they are. Kind of like the Phoenix effect. Like in death, they are stronger than they were. Like Obi-Wan Kenobi. You know, strike me down, I'll come back stronger. And it's crazy because when they get struck down, they come back with a whole different narrative and a whole different. You know, you would think his name was fucking Saint George Floyd. No, it's not. He's not Saint George. All right, he wasn't a great guy, and I'm not sitting here saying that, you know, he should have died like that. But I will say this: he didn't value his life, so that's why he died like that. See, it's real simple. You know, this isn't me coming from a position of hatred or self-hatred or whatever type of shit that a lot of these fucking woke, super liberal motherfucking Negroes would love to say. And, you know, because if I was a white dude, they would be like, oh, he's racist. You know, they would just real fast to try to, you know, discredit what I'm saying with racist. But since I'm not, they can't do that. So then they try to, you know, these other, you know, lame-ass attempts to try to, you know, derail me and stuff like that. But obviously, you know, them niggas is the problem. Because if you say, okay, I'll entertain what you're saying as opposed to what Double A Heck is saying, but what are your solutions? You know, what are your thoughts on the quote-unquote black man? And then I guarantee you they're not going to give you anything of substance following that, period. And if you don't believe me, go and try it out, all right? But anyway, let me play this video again so I can finish this, because I wanted this to be short.
Outrage pouring in this morning after Congresswoman Maxine Waters appeared to incite protesters in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. The California Congresswoman breaking the local curfew far from her home district.
This as tensions remain high with a
well, obviously, also, as you can see, this is on Fox News, so they're definitely going to, you know, come from their perspective on it, and you already know what the perspective that is. But, you know, is she inciting a riot? Yes. To say be more confrontational, you damn right. You know, and again, that's irresponsible of her to do. Especially for someone that's not going to be out there doing any of that shit. Very irresponsible. But hey, you know what happens? If you want to follow that shit, that's on you. You won't see me freaking, you know, batting an eye and crying or nothing if 5 more niggas get shot following her advice. It'll be very unfortunate, But you know, that's the state that our people are in because we want to drive the cars before we even learn how to crawl. But with that being said, that's it.